Welcome to the ADHD Creative Club podcast, where we explore the unique challenges and strategies for creative professionals navigating life with ADHD. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Dom Newton, an accomplished sports presenter and award-winning podcaster who's received his diagnosis in November 2023. In this episode, Dom shares his personal journey and practical insights that will resonate with creative freelancers and agency owners who are also managing ADHD while building their careers and businesses. Before we dive in, head over to the ADHD Creative Club and sign up for more tips and tricks to help you thrive. Now, let's get into my conversation with Dom Newton. Dom, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. Yeah, it's great.
I think to start with, it would be great to kind of hear a little bit about your background and kind of what got you started in like sports broadcasting, but also from an ADHD perspective as well, how that kind of goes alongside it, and your first kind of memories of knowing something was slightly different, I guess.
Okay, yeah, so similar to yourself, I was only relatively recently diagnosed with ADHD. I'd always suspected I was a little bit different. I don't know whether I thought it was ADHD, but I knew that there was something different about me. I think that maybe I felt very self-aware. I was really thought I was annoying to other people. I would become obsessed with things throughout my life, as a kid and as an adult. And it was only on finding out that it was ADHD in November 2023 that then things start to make sense. You know, you remember things when you were a kid. I was obsessed with the TV show Home Improvement when I was a kid. Why? And then, you know, I wanted to buy. I remember when the internet first came out, I was Googling toys from this TV show that was on in like the early 90s, like just weird obsessions that constantly stick in your head, things constantly looping in your head all the time. And, you know, nail biting, for instance, fidgety, and being able to do things very quickly in lesson, and then the teacher assumes that the work must be wrong or rushed, and then they look at it and it is rushed, but it's right. You know, things like that, just those little things, and everything starts to add up. And it's only when, I don't know what your process was, but when you sit down with the psychologist and they're asking you a lot of questions, and generally these people that are diagnosed in ADHD are used to dealing with children, so a lot of the questions are based around your childhood. What was this like? What was your relationship like as a child? It was only when I was sitting down speaking to them, answering those questions, that a lot dawned on me about what must have been ADHD when I was a kid. And I think, reflecting on that, the reason that I'm in the career I'm in now is because of what I now know was ADHD, because of obsession being the main one. That I knew that I wanted to do something in presenting. From being a kid, I was obsessed with things like Blue Peter and kids TV generally, and always thought I'd love to do that. I would love to do that, and was kind of driven. And then as soon as you get to sort of like GCSE year and you can pick media studies to do, I was straight on that. And then my journey to my career now was literally just obsession and emailing people asking for jobs. You know, I don't have any formal qualifications or anything like that. I literally would say yes to opportunities and then Google how to edit video, graphics, things like that. And again, I feel like that's an ADHD thing. You know, I would then think, oh, I need to learn Adobe Premiere. So I would sit all night watching videos on YouTube, and I'd think, oh, if I don't watch it now, then I won't know how to do it by morning, or I'll forget to watch that video. So I'll better do it now. And I genuinely think that ADHD is the reason that I've managed to carve out a career in media and in sport, things that I've wanted to do since I was a kid.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. There's so many things I resonate with there. I think it's really interesting, having recently gone through the diagnosis, and I did a little piece of content about the fact that, you know, they get you to fill out these forms to start with, which is like an absolute nightmare, because it's like, yeah, I can't really do menial tasks very well, and then like, great, fill out these forms, but then delving back into your childhood, it was what was mad for me was I just thought it was me. And like, I remember trying to listen in lessons and really trying to listen, because I was kind of a little bit behind in like science and maths and things like that, and wanting to listen but just couldn't. And
I totally relate to that.
Yeah, it was weird, and I was just like, why can't I do this? And I was being really hard on myself. But now, like, understanding there's other people that are going through the same thing is like, it's a bit of a mind mind-blowing moment, really.
Yeah, finding out that when you were sitting in class and your mind was drifting, or if a teacher was rambling on, or they were reading from a textbook and you switched off, you struggled to follow along with them, finding out that not everybody was going through that. You know, you sit in class as a
Yeah,
kid and you think, well, everyone must be like this. Who's listening here, really? And it turns out
yeah,
everybody's listening but you. And it's just that
yeah.
that attention span is something that I still struggle with massively now. My short-term
Mm,
memory is appalling if it's
mm.
not something I'm interested in. If it's not
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that sets a light off in my brain, or the creative juices flowing, I find it very, very hard to stick to that topic. And that happened throughout my schooling, and I just didn't realize that it was different, that it was a
mm,
neurological condition. It was never, where I grew up, I had a really lovely upbringing, kind of working class, not very, nobody spoke about neurological conditions really. ADHD was, you're at a family party and it's like, don't give Jonathan orange juice because he's got ADHD and we won't be able to handle him. That's what ADHD was to me. And the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
time it's me that's sitting there not listening to people or zoning out, and I'm the guy with ADHD. So
yeah.
yeah, it's I think it's very different now. There's a lot more understanding of it, particularly in my family and people of our generation, really. We're much more aware of these things, whereas then it literally was just that kid with orange juice. My parents would have never thought, well, Dom, he gets obsessed with things. He bites his nails. He's got a short attention span, a bit of a short fuse sometimes. Um, they'd never thought that was ADHD. They just thought, well, that's his personality, which it is. That is true. It is my personality. But maybe my life
Mm.
would be different, for better or worse, if I'd been diagnosed back then.
Yeah. It's a weird one because a couple of people I've been speaking to have said about there's this certain types of people that have been diagnosed. They kind of have this what's the word? They kind of wonder what that life would have been. They're grieving that person that potentially they could have been, and they see the potential in it. And it's a really weird one because I'm like, I kind of feel like my whole personality, I don't know whether you feel the same here, but like is quite defined by these traits, like the fact you be quite creative and you've got a good sense of humor. And obviously I've seen your podcast clips and things, and like, it's the same thing there. And part of that is the ADHD working its kind of magic in the way. So
Yeah.
I think there's a real positive to be had from it. Like you say, it's carved that pathway for you into your career. So maybe you would have just been in an office or something before.
Yeah, exactly. That could have been the truth. And it's not that I am bothered about having ADHD. I quite like it. I feel like it's a
Mm,
superpower almost. I feel like I wouldn't have,
mm,
like, the podcast I did wasn't made by a big company or anything. It was a friend and I, back in 2009. Couldn't get, we both worked in radio for bits and bobs, and we couldn't get on air. We just wanted to be on air. We thought we were funny. We wanted to be on air. And we did a breakfast show for like a community radio station. And the more we recorded and listened back to ourselves, the more we realized, oh, we are quite good. So then I just, again, obsessing, started emailing. I emailed the head of comedy at the BBC and Frank Skinner, David Baddiel, like literally just sending this to everybody who was at all relevant to what we wanted to try and achieve. And the head of comedy at the BBC got back to me and said, I actually think you are funny. This is, I want you to meet my friend Jonathan Wall, who's now the head of BBC Sounds, I think, at the moment. But at the time, he was the controller of Five Live. And he said something that kind of resonates with ADHD now, is that I've listened to your show and you are funny, but you are all over the place. There is no structure whatsoever. You need to
yeah.
find something that you both can focus on and come back to me. And then if you can do that and make it successful, then we'll think about putting you on air. So my friend and I realized we both like football, but we also liked the scatty, structureless approach because it's the easiest option. It's like the route of least
Mm.
resistance, is where you could just turn up and turn a microphone on. So we thought, well, why don't we just record ourselves at the football? We talk like this at the football anyway. And we started doing that. And then I became obsessed with it because I loved it. I loved doing it. I loved going to the football. I loved, editing it and then making the branding for it. I would stay up all night branding an episode that 10 people were listening to, because it's just, that's how I was feeding my brain and making myself happy, is to do this thing that I didn't care that nobody was listening to it at first. I just really wanted to make something that I enjoyed. ADHD made me put the hours in. And it's because I loved it. You know, it's not like I felt like I was doing a shift down the mine or anything like that. I just loved doing it. And because I did that, and because I obsessed over that podcast, people elsewhere in the industry saw that work and offered me jobs. You know, on the back of that, we were able to go and do a podcast for ITV during the World Cup in 2014 with Alan Davies, who, for me growing up, Alan Davies was like Jonathan Creek, like massively famous guy. And he's the nicest bloke. There's a real arm around the shoulder for myself and Tom, who I do the podcast with. And we spent time at his house recording those podcasts. And again, you just become obsessed with it. I was scrolling through Twitter for hours and hours and hours looking for people talking about the podcast. And it's not always good. And it's awful to see people slagging you off, obviously, for everyone. But I still recite those lines over in my head that some random stranger who I'll never ever see, probably, still sometimes it pops into my head, oh, that guy said that and that made me feel terrible 10 years ago. I don't know if you have that same thing, that, and it's like with music lyrics and things like that, things will just get stuck in there. It's like they're stuck on a hamster wheel in your brain, and it just goes over and over. And you know, it can be one sentence or one set of lyrics from a song, and it's just over and over, and you're humming it and singing it, and that irritates me. That kind of makes me angry. Sometimes I just think, God, I just want that, get that out of my head. And I did that with the comments. So, but again, the obsession is the reason that happened, and the attention to detail. And you know, I'd fall out with my friend Tom over. He'd say, oh, I really want to edit this, and I'd say, okay, and then he'd edit it, and I'd go back in and re-edit a lot of stuff because I didn't. And this is, I didn't think it was good enough, and I guess that's not a nice way to have been, really. And that worries me. The self-consciousness is a massive thing for me as well. You know, the rejection sensitivity and all of that, which I didn't know had a name. The rejection sensitive dysphoria. I didn't realize that was a thing. I just thought, well, everyone feels like this when someone's said a bad comment about you or whatever. And when you go into podcasting, you might find this. If people send comments, you kind of worried that they don't like you or they're not going to like what you're producing.
Yeah, I think that is a big one for sure. There's a couple of things I can even imagine now in my mind that people have said like years ago that are still there. So how do you get over that then? Like, you've got these things kind of swirling around, like how do you manage that and not let it affect you?
I don't know about not letting it affect me. It did big time. It was like, but I don't know really. But I say that I just let time do its thing. I just forget about it eventually. But I didn't like it at all. And to be fair, I did speak to Alan about it and other friends who are kind of in the public eye, who've dealt with things far worse. Like, you know, I got a few mean comments on Twitter. You know, people I've spoken to had awful things written about them in newspapers and stuff. It wasn't that, but I did. Eventually, people just say, "Well, like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, who is this person?
Yeah.
Like, that's irrelevant." But it still bothers me. It still bothers me. I mean, right now we're having this conversation, and I'm very conscious that I'm flitting between subjects because I know that I've got a lot to say about this, and yet I'm jumping from obsession to rejection, dysphoria, Bradford City, BBC, ITV, and it frustrates me when I listen back to my own podcasts or any content that I've made. I think, oh, if only I'd been more focused there, that could have been so much better.
Yeah,
but I think that's the point of this, isn't it?
This is the point, like, and all the people I'm going to be speaking to are all suffering with the same thing. So I imagine it will probably jump around quite a lot. And for people listening, it might keep them actually listening because they might get bored of a certain section and then suddenly we're off on somewhere else. So, but no, but it's all so interesting and so relevant. And so like going through to like how you are day to day, because obviously you're front facing in front of camera, you're interviewing, you're working with quite famous people, you're interviewing sports stars, things like that. If you've got, I struggle quite a bit with kind of self-criticism like you were talking about. So having the confidence to be confident on camera, did that take you a while to master, or were you just like you just threw yourself into it? Yeah,
Yeah,
what was that like?
in front of camera, it's like a switch goes off and I gain a bit of focus and I just love it. It's like the same feeling I get when I used to play football with my mates on the street when I was a kid. It's like my brain has chosen that this is the thing that will give it the dopamine it needs to make me happy, basically.
Are there any things in your day to day? It's high pressure. You're probably going to have to do quite a bit of research on people you're talking to, things like that. How do you? Are there any techniques that you found that are working for you? Perhaps you've come across by accident, or they're active things that you've started to do to kind of manage your mindset?
I think this is gonna if somebody's listening to this and they don't have ADHD, this is gonna sound like the bare minimum that you should be doing. But
Mm,
research is the best one, and bullet point that research. Don't necessarily give your so say for instance I'm going to do an interview. I will bullet point key things rather than write out the full question because again, the ADHD brain, you start reading the sentence, you skip to the end before you're supposed to be there, and
yeah.
then you lose the track in your mind, and then you can't get back into the interview. So just give yourself pointers so that you stay natural when you're doing the interview. I found that to be a big thing because
Mm,
I've fallen on that sword a million times where I've just thought, well, I know enough. I can just go and do this. And then my mind goes blank. Everything, it's almost like your head is a toilet full of mess. And just as you're about to go and do the interview or go into that important meeting at work where you're presenting a project or something, it's like as soon as you walk through the door for the interview, someone goes flush and it's all gone. And you're like, oh my God, I've forgotten everything. I've forgotten
yeah.
everything. And I used to just masquerade that as, well, I prefer my interviews to be casual and organic and I don't need the questions. I will ask questions based on what they tell me, and you get away with that sometimes. But then when I started bullet pointing, especially making loads of use of Apple Notes
Mm,
on my phone, and I've got a billion notepads that are full. You know, some have only got a couple of pages used and things like that. But it's making those quick notes to make sure that that stays somewhere in your head or that you can remind yourself. Because the key things just disappear for me. It's enormously frustrating. And I've read up
mm.
about it. I know that it is fairly common in people with ADHD that it's almost like the lights go off and whatever you planned is gone. So the biggest thing for me has been the research, and referring to those notes, making sure that I know the subject before I go into it, because you can't really get away with blagging it all that much in general life as well to make these notes. You know, I put notes on my phone to remind myself not to buy takeaways because that is I do that every night. So
Yeah,
yeah, I need to set constant reminders, and I forget. I could do with a reminder to set reminders sometimes. I think the memory thing is the thing that's most frustrating for me and the most frustrating for other people around me,
yeah.
because, and I don't know if you're the same, you know, we work in similar industries where the biggest buzz you can get is working as a creative team. You've got other people in there and you're throwing ideas around, and I get giddy at that. This is like where the dopamine really takes over my brain, when you're in that creative environment and you're throwing ideas around and then everybody loves your idea. It's frustrating for other people if you're forgetting things, or
Mm,
um, you've got that urge to interrupt them because you've worked out what they want to say before they finish the sentence. So you're ready to jump in with your idea. Um, I did see a video on Instagram. The person was saying an ADHD person isn't being rude by interrupting you. It's just that they're so overjoyed that they can relate to what you're saying. So if someone says, "Oh, I saw a blue Ferrari today," I go, "Oh my God, I saw a yellow Ferrari too. Let's make this story about me." It's not making the story about
yeah,
me. It's that I just want to be involved in that conversation. I love that we've got something to talk about together. I can relate to it. And when I
yeah.
saw that video, I felt a real sense of relief. I was like, ah, yeah, I do that. But knowing that it's part of this makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird one. I feel like because it's being ADHD's kind of really been thrust into the forefront recently, a lot more people are getting diagnosed. And I think some people are a bit funny about it because they feel like, oh yeah, you've got ADHD, yeah, just like everyone else kind of thing. But at the same time, I think all of these little hang-ups and things that we have to deal with, and especially as like running a business and kind of doing what you're doing, like you need these systems in place, and people have to understand they've kind of got to give you a little bit of leeway. And I know it will be hard for them, but it's like understanding any other condition that anybody else has got. people have to be sensitive to that. And if they know, then they get some context. So if you are going off on one and you're having you're really going in on a subject, as long as people are understanding that, that just means you're really into it, and you will come up with some good ideas. I think it takes away that frustration, I think, for them perhaps. So I actually think like the whole, sorry.
No. See, there we go. On brand.
There you go.
But I think I'd grown up, particularly in Yorkshire, where you don't talk about those things, or you never did. We do now. Like, really opened up to my friends. I went through a divorce a few years ago, and realised that opening up to your friends is how you help them understand it. Not saying something is where you suffer alone. And I do think that the world is changing now, where men in particular feel far more comfortable talking about these things. Like, I would have been so proud that I wouldn't talk to anyone about this. I would have never done this podcast. But I do think that over the years, and you hear people like Rob Beckett on his Parenting Hell podcast talk about his dyslexia and his anxiety when he goes into recording studios or goes on tour, which he's doing now. You see those and you think, well, yeah, this is very healthy. This is going to make us so much better as a population, because we now feel comfortable to talk about these things.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you think about, if there's anybody who has ADHD, potentially who's thinking about going down a similar route to you, what do you feel are those qualities that they should be leaning into? Like, I loved the fact that you were like, I wanted to do this, so I literally emailed everybody. I learned everything about it, and then I contacted everybody. And I think that's really amazing. And people like to overthink things too much, and they like to stew on stuff and not do anything about it. So what do you think is an ADHD superpower people could use going forward, do you think?
I'd say it's the word of the podcast is that obsession, that when you find something that you are so obsessed with, I've been able to achieve things because of that obsession. It's not necessarily healthy to stay up all night editing a podcast, making the branding, making a website people can look at, then go on Twitter and then designing some merchandise because I might be able to make a bit of money out of this. It's not necessarily healthy to do that, but I feel like that is the thing that, if you've got ADHD, I know maybe not everyone with ADHD, but for me in particular, that's what got me through. Like, I was a working class lad from Bradford who'd, I'd had jobs stacking shelves in supermarkets and things. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not what I ultimately wanted to do with my life. And because I was obsessed and because I was so focused, I guess, I was then able to make a career out of something that people would have ordinarily thought was being lazy or not something that was important. And the reason I have my job now is because of that focus and obsession. And other people that I work with in the creative industry that have ADHD or dyslexia, even, it's kind of they kind of cross over on the Venn diagram a little bit. It's very similar. The reason they're in the position they are is because they have obsessed over something. It could be their presenting style or the sport that they're into, or I work with a lot of writers. It's similar for them. They're obsessed with data, and they see numbers in a different way to anybody else, and they've turned that into a career. And I think if I was a student, again, I would say embrace that. Don't be scared of it. Don't feel like it's something that's going to hinder your progress. I would really lean into that and really get to know whatever subject it is that you want to do well. Creative industries, I think that ADHD absolutely is the superpower. I don't know what it would be like if you were wanting to be a historian or something, but I think particularly in the creative industry, there are quite a lot of us actually who have some sort of neurodiversity who can relate to each other. And then you see that in people's output, I think. That obsession, the reason that it's so good, the reason an edit looks so good, the reason a color looks so good on a video, the reason the audio is so clean is because your sound guy was obsessed with audio, your editor was obsessed with the cuts and the coloring of a video. And I think that creativity is where a lot of us have found each other. We've all merged in this area that we were able to use our ADHD, whether we knew it or not, to turn into something that would make us happy. Because maybe I'm wrong, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like the industry we're in is a hobby. We did this because we love it. We love doing it. It was glamorous as a kid, working with cameras and computers and video editing stuff was always the thing at school. It's like, oh man, what is that? I really want some of that. And to
Yeah.
have been able to turn a career into it, I honestly feel like I'm living the dream, really.
I think, yeah, leaning into your passion, getting obsessed with it healthily, and drink water and take breaks, but get into it. It's easier said than done, but like, yeah, I think that's fantastic advice.
But just on, I think that the big thing is that with ADHD, it's really hard to focus on or put your all into something that you're not interested in. So when I found, when I was introduced to it by a teacher at school about media and things like that, and watching Blue Peter on TV, I found that thing to focus on, the thing that I would do very well. So I could have well been a really good tennis player had that been the thing that I'd been obsessed with back when I was a kid.
Yeah. So what would you say is your like next step? Obviously, career-wise, I guess it's continuing to do what you do. But with your ADHD, is there anything that you're hoping to kind of discover, or any further steps that you're looking into now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wide open to working out how to harness it. You know, to be able to regularly find that thing that helps you focus, not just it be something that I love and that's what helps. And the podcast that I did, Bantam's Banter, I've never found a thing that I've been as obsessed with since that. And I would love to find that again. It's almost like finding love again, I guess. Like you want to find that thing that's going to give you the rocket up the arse for the next thing, because it can feel pretty bad in between those. I don't know if you felt the same thing, but you work on a project that you're really happy with and you love it. And then when that project's over, there is a bit of a lull in mood and creativity in between those projects. And that's not nice. It doesn't feel nice. So working out a way to avoid that would be great. I'd love to work out how I can harness this and regularly use the superpowers that I think come with ADHD, regularly use them to be happier, be better at my job, and even more creative. I think that for me is the most important thing. I don't know how I'm gonna speak to professionals about it. You know, the people that diagnose me then pass you on to a psychiatrist who then helps you harness it, offer you solutions. Doesn't necessarily have to be medical. The unfortunate thing, I guess, is that a lot of them involve meditation and things like that. And I don't know about you, but I cannot do that. I can't sit still for long enough. I need I need the TV on in the background, even when I'm editing video, because there's something about that constant stimulation. I think it's why I pick my nails and always touch my beard, or, you know, stroke my lips, I think is one of them, because I need that constant stimulation all the time. I'd love to be able to harness that, and I don't know if there's a medication like that can help you focus. I don't know. I'm yet to find that out. That is probably the next part of my journey. Have you tried anything? Have you
I'm still,
since finding out?
Yeah, I'm still kind of waiting medication wise. I've got a very close friend who's one step ahead of me with his diagnosis. So he's actually been taking it. And he basically was like, yeah, it was day 2. And there was a task, there was a big project that he was doing that he'd been putting off for about a year. That was all kind of like writing a load of stuff. And he just went to the library and just did it. And he was like, this is insane. I can concentrate and I can just do stuff that I can do like a normal task. Like, it's mad. So it affects people in different ways.
Okay.
It affects people in different ways. I think I'm obviously, especially with this podcast, I'm very clear that I do not want to see as if I'm imparting any medical wisdom on anybody, because I'm not qualified. But
I'd love it to be like that Bradley Cooper film, Limitless. If I just take a pill and then all of a sudden I've got full access to everything in here, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think it is like that.
Yeah.
But it does remind me of, I don't, you know, I can get quite messy in the house, and then you're overawed by it, and you can leave it for 2 weeks and you don't do it, and you think it's going to take you forever. And then when you actually do find that time to do it and it takes you 20 minutes and you can't understand why you ever delayed so long because it wasn't that big of a deal. That's a weird feeling. That is such a bizarre feeling, because you're like, oh, I'm done, and it didn't take long, and it wasn't hard. That's weird, and that creeps into my work sometimes. So that's not ideal. You know, the reporting. If it's something that's not as sexy as being in front of the camera, it's reporting and writing emails to people about how well things did. That's hard for me to get to doing, but not once it's done. Perfectly adequate at doing it. But yeah, I'd probably like your friend. That big project that he delayed, all of a sudden he was able to do it. I'd love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, but at the same time, some people find that from the research I've done, that they lose that some part of their personality, that creativity sometimes is lost. Those traits that we've got that make us us, and some. There was one guy. It was a really extreme case where the guy was like, his wife kind of was. She basically was like, "You're not the same person as you were," and it was kind of affecting his marriage. And so it's like it's a weird one. It's a journey that it's very much like you've got to just try something and see it. It's the same with all these techniques, the Notes app, and I've got just alarms on my calendar to let me know there's a meeting coming up, and like all these little things. I'm trying to get systems in place so at least I can just maneuver myself day to day. I will try the medication, but we'll see how it goes. But
yeah, I'm trepidatious about it for sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin this personality.
Yeah.
I'm a really cool guy. What if it goes?
Exactly. That's it. I feel the same. So where can people find you and like check out your stuff? Because obviously you've got another podcast that you're doing at the moment. Is that right? Alongside all your broadcast work?
Yeah, that's right. So Bantam's Banter, the podcast that won the awards and did quite well for us a while ago, is just an archive now. We don't do it anymore. That's 10 years old, I think, is the last episode. But that's still available at bantamsbanter.com. You can also find our new podcast on there, which is called Manhood. And it's not just for men. It's called Manhood because it just sounded, it's just a good title. In fact, I heard a song on TikTok. And I wanted to, and the song was called Manhood. I was like, well, that's a good theme tune and a good title for the podcast. So I contacted the artist. They said I could use it. It was one of those Alan Partridge style moments where you title first. And basically, it is what we did on Banter's Band. It's just my friend and I talking, but we're both dads now. One of us still married, one divorced. We've got kids, and we talk a lot about that. It's messy because my friend has some traits of undiagnosed ADHD, and we talk about that a lot as well. He tries to relate to what I've been going through, and then he will kind of say, "Oh, I feel like that as well." So there's a lot of open and honest conversation in there. We are a bit silly sometimes, but yeah, that's also available at bantamsbanter.com. And then my socials are @sportingdom. You can find me on everything, including Blue Sky, which I've not used yet, but I'm on there.
I need to get on there. It's another one to add to the list of things. Another distraction on the phone. Well, I thank you so much for your time. Honestly, I can't believe, firstly, that people were actually reaching out to me, coming back to me and saying they were happy to open up. Like, I know obviously it's an incredibly personal thing to talk about something like this on a public forum. So thank you. And
my pleasure. It's so therapeutic, and it's good to share those experiences with somebody else who's going through it. And for me, with you, we're kind of in a similar industry, and it's even more relatable, isn't it? And I think that the key with a lot of things that involve mental health and things that are going wrong for you, if you can relate to somebody else, if you can share those problems, it literally is their problem shared is a problem halved, isn't it? You do feel better when you've spoken to someone about it. And it's not necessarily, ADHD is not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's obviously given us great careers, but there are things that we find challenging. And when you can talk to somebody else that's also going through it, it's a huge relief and does relax you a little bit and makes you feel better about what you're dealing with now and what's to come as well, especially when you're newly diagnosed like we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for your time. Obviously, I'll be listening into the podcast, the Manhood podcast, and hopefully we'll get you on again at some point in the future and we can kind of catch up on how the journey's going. But
my
thank
pleasure.
You so much.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Cheers, Tom.